Hello everyone, welcome to this session of Debug panel in UiPath. Well, debugging is a process of identifying and removing errors from our computer code and our software. Since UiPath development is also a form of computer coding, or you can say we will write code, we need to do a lot of debugging in our code. In this part 1 video, we will try to understand 5 different options that are available: step into, step over, step out, and retry ignore. Let's go into the code. If you want to start any kind of debugging, we need to first write code. But before writing the code, let's see what are the different options that are available in the debug panel. On the top, if you can see, this is our debug panel. Click on that, where you can find debug a file option and step into, step over, and step out. To understand this, let's write a sequence. Let's write some log messages to see how we can use these options. This is log 1. I'm just copying and pasting log 2, log 3. So to understand step into, let's have a breakpoint over here. Breakpoint is also a part of debug panel, and let's start with debug file. Here you will have two options: debug file, debug, run file, and run. We will see in detail about these three options later. Let's go with debug file. Let's start with debug. And if you see, the bot stopped at one particular location, log message. Let's see with the output. So this is my output panel where I can see all the log messages. Step into. So when you see step into, this is going at one step. So this activity will complete, and after this activity, the next activity will be taken up. And if I use step into again, this act will be completed and it will go into the next step. So let's complete this particular flow. So we have three log messages: log 1, log 2, and log 3. Let's go ahead and try to add one container to it. So container is again a sequence. So in this sequence, I will add these two log fields. Now when I go ahead and step into, so instead of going debug, I can also go and click on step into to start any kind of execution. But it will start at the beginning and it will stop for us to go for the next step. Press F10 to go into the next activity. Now if you see, when we use step into, this will go inside this sequence. But when we go and work with step over, this will execute, but this will not stop for each and every activity within this sequence. Let's go ahead and click on step over. So if you can see, all the activities in this particular sequence are completed, and then it stopped after completing all the activities inside this particular sequence. And let's continue. Now, the main difference between step into and step over is step into will wait for each and every activity to complete and it will go to the next activity. Step over, if it is a parent, it will complete all the activities in it and then it will wait after completing all the activities within the sequence or within that particular container. So this is, let's take it as sequence 1. So this is my annotation. This is sequence 1. In the same way, let's add one more sequence called Control V. Let's rename this to sequence 2. Now we have two log messages and this is sequence 2. So what we can do, we can go ahead and let's change this to log 3 and log 4. Now altogether we have two sequences and this is a parent sequence. Okay, let's try to work with all the three options: step into, step over, and step out. So instead of using step into, now I'll use step over. Let's see. Step over. step over. So if you see, this is taking one step at a time, but if I use Stepinto now, it will go inside this particular workflow or this particular sequence. Stepinto, it's going in, but if I use Stepinto, it will go to the next item. But if I use step over, since this is at the same level, this is going into this particular activity. But now if I just go ahead and use step over, this is coming back. Now if I use step over again, this will go into this particular sequence. But if I use step out, so this will go to its parent. Step out. Okay, but if you have observed, the logs that are available in sequence 2, that is log 3 and log 4, are printed. So by this, if we want to execute any sequence of steps, but if I want to exempt list of steps, for example, I just don't want to stop at each and every activity within this sequence, and I just want to stop at the parent sequence again, I can use step over. Now if I use step over again, it's going to the parent and it's closing. So this is how you can use Stepinto, step over and step out. The last two items, that is retry and ignore. So to use retry and ignore, we need to create some errors. Let's go ahead and try to create some errors. To create some errors, we will try to use activities, and in this activity, let's try to use throw activity. So whenever we are using throw, it means that we are trying to throw a exception or throw a error to the program when we require. So let's go ahead and add new business rule exception or new exception. In this exception, let's go ahead and debug exception. So this is a message that we are trying to print. Other than that, this is nothing. So let's see what happens. I'm just keeping this throw message between log 1 and log 2. Let's go ahead and start our process. Debug the file. This stopped at the breakpoint, and let's see without using Stepinto, step over or step out. Let's go ahead and click on continue. When I clicked on continue, it stopped at throw because we are working in debug mode. If we are working with run mode, this will not stop. It will throw a pop-up or it will throw an exception. So what is it exactly saying? It's saying that there is an error and it's showing me three options. Do you want to retry the error? Do you want to ignore, or do you want to restart? If I click on restart, this particular workflow will be started again from the beginning. But if I use Stepinto, it will go to the parent. Now I can just hit on retry. I'm just asking it to retry for this error or retry this particular sequence, because there might be a situation where it might throw an error, but we want to just retry it so that the next time it can be a successful. For this particular example, we will still get an error. But if you hit on ignore, it will just ignore this exception and it will continue to the next item to execute. So if you see here, it thrown an exception and it continued with the log 3. But if you see here, we just used retry option and that retried this particular sequence again. Now if you observe, these two options, retry and ignore, are disabled now. But if there is any error, these two options will be highlighted and we will be able to use this. So until and unless there is a error actively present in our code, in our execution, we will not be able to see these two errors. But since we have already ignored this particular error, this exception is ignored and we are able to continue with the next activities. Stepinto. So instead of going step into and printing out these messages, I'll just use step out. So it's going to the parent. So step out will always take you, complete the execution within the activities and take you out to the parent sequence. And then if I use step out again, it will go and complete the process. So this is everything about all the activities or all the options: step into, step over, step out, retry and ignore. So on a recap, retry and ignore will be available only when there is any exception actively present while execution in the debug mode. And these are used to execute one step at a time and continue all the steps within the sequence. We will use step over, and step out is used to complete all the activities within the sequence or within that container and go to the parent. So those are the differences. See you in the next video.